For all his sons and his daughters won't fill the cities with faces. Iniquities of they father, bloodthirstiest of our nation. Not for living water, waiting to put that work in. Hamashiach give us that order, prepare slaughter. For all his sons and his daughters won't fill the cities with faces. Iniquities of they father, bloodthirstiest of our nation. Not for living water, waiting to put this work in. Hamashiach give us that order.
So he wasn't disagreeing with that. What he was saying is that over time that it wasn't really that, excuse me. He wasn't arguing with the historical facts of it, because I was going to go to that, right? If you don't believe if it's historically accurate at certain points, then we can go there and show it. But he's saying people traveled, people had a message, and people spread that message. But you got to understand this concept of Christianity and this universal appeal that the Bible is supposed to have, where people go and spread this message to all people. That only happens at the back of the book. There wasn't this message of the gospel before Christ. There wasn't this message of go into all of these nations and spread this word. No. We was dealing with serving the Lord, and when we didn't go into captivity, how the hell we was going to get out of captivity. And this is a key point. Excuse me. This is a key point that a lot of people should start to pick up on. It's a pattern that people should start to pick up on when they're listening to Christians. They're making what happened in the back of the book as to what's supposed to represent the entire book. And it's just not the case. There's so many things that happen from Genesis to Malachi that then there's this kind of shift in the mission, so to speak, right? It's still a pursuit and a drive for righteousness. But then, by this time of Matthew, the Israelites are now spread throughout the four corners of the earth. So now the mission is to take that message and to take this information and this gospel, this good news, and to go find where the Israelites were supposed to be gathered from, as the book of Deuteronomy had already prophesied to happen. But that wasn't happening during the time of the Babylonian Empire, during the time of the Persian Empire, during the time of the Greek Empire, and it definitely wasn't happening during the time of Egypt. It wasn't happening during the time of the Assyrians. Why? Because then when we read in the history, this is the reason why the northern kingdom said, listen, we're going to leave the Assyrians to go into another land, not to spread the message, but so that they could adhere to the righteousness that they knew they were supposed to live up to, that God commanded them to do. This idea of spreading this message didn't come until Christ, which again, through him, is now those people scattered throughout the world now have an opportunity for redemption to come back unto God. But before that, there was not this message. So when the guy was saying, well, it was their sole purpose, this is the reason why you start to see correlation, because people traveled and spread that message. That just wasn't true. But they're basing what they've read and what their religion is predominantly based on, which is the New Testament, and spreading the gospel. They're taking that and making that be the entire narrative of the whole book. It's just not the case. So when we adhere to the text honestly, statements like that can't be made. What's your precept? Go ahead.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee.
So you see, the context here is when these things come to pass. Because as it's going to tell us in Deuteronomy, that in all the places where the Lord had scattered the Israelites, he'd reach his hand out and bring them back. They hadn't even been scattered yet. So this wasn't the immediate mission, but this is a prophecy to say at a certain time, after all of these things happen, is when that message would go out to fetch all those that were spread abroad. Go ahead.
And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse,
Read.
Which I have set before thee.
And what was the curse? That the Israelites were going to captivity as a result of disobedience. And then again, the Lord promised to bring them back and return their captivity. Go ahead.
And thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whether the Lord thy God have driven thee.
We were not driven away at this time. This wasn't something that was done at this time. So the message could not have been spread abroad at this time because this had not been fulfilled. This is a prophecy. This is something that was going to happen into the future. That's why it says, and it shall come to pass. Read.
That's it.
Keep reading.
And shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice.
Remember, this was also a contingency. Not only was it prophetic because we understand and know how it turned out, But it was also contingency, because had we adhered to the commandments of the Most High, we wouldn't have been affected by this. Go ahead.
According to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul. That then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will turn and gather thee from all the nations, whether the Lord thy God has gathered thee.
So when the Lord says and promised that he would gather us from all the places where he scattered us, this is now the necessity for this message being spread. Before that, the message wasn't being spread because we was all in the land. We had all received the message from Moses when he came down from the mount, and we was all in the land doing our thing. Right. But like I said, they skip out. Justifiably so, because I mean, he clearly told us he was born and raised Catholic. But the point I'm highlighting is he responds to my point about over the course of thousands of years that men were influenced by the same God to the same people to do the same thing, which is to come back unto God. Return unto God, obey God. He ignored all of that and jumped to the back of the book and made the gospel the entire Bible. And that's just not the case. It's just not true. It shows you where the point of focus is, and it shows you where they lack and why they come to the conclusions they do, because they're only using a fragment of the Bible. The New Testament itself, from Matthew to Revelation, is not 1,000 years. Shit, it's really like a little over 100 years. We're talking about a small time period. A small period in time versus Genesis to Malachi, we're talking about thousands of years. It literally tells you from Abraham to David, from David to Christ is many, many generations, right? Go ahead. That was it? Yeah. That was it on that. So yeah, that was the point. What's going on, Barbara? Hey, brother, you got a question? You ever heard about what we doing up here? You familiar? Yeah. What's your take on it?
Oh, I'm open.
Open?
Yeah.
What's your worldview? What's your theological disposition? You believe in God?
I believe there's one God.
One God. You believe in the Bible?
I do, but there's some interpretations. Questionable.
What interpretation do you hold?
Huh?
I said, what interpretation do you hold? You believe in the Messiah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What message of the Messiah do you believe he came and brought in his incarnation?
The one message I take away from it is loving people.
Loving people?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's what yeah.
For the purpose of?
To bringing him back to himself.
Bringing him back to himself.
Being an ambassador of who he is, a representation of who he is.
Got you.
Once we get, I think once you have an idea, you walk in that. And I believe that all that revelation will come in time.
I agree.
I believe it's just too vast to get in a week, you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But I mean, some people will have an accelerated learning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, the Messiah did, right? By the time he was 12 years old, being about his father's business, I mean, he was on a good path. And by the time he got and started his ministry, we know that he was leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of people who had been following it their whole lives for much longer than he had.
Right.
But I asked that question because understanding that, and even what you said, getting that and walking in that, and the revelation will come later. I literally just spoke on this last night at class, right? Because there is a lot of us within this Israelite community of ours that takes the position of being born again, that takes the position of becoming a new creature, renewing your mind and renewing your spirit, as if this is a one-time deal and that you automatically get it once you have heard and received the message. And that's not the case, man. That revelation,
it's a process.
It's definitely a process. It's definitely a process. So
I think the believing is just the beginning.
Absolutely. That's the root. That's the foundation.
And you got to be able to move with God and what he's revealing. That's
Absolutely.
my personal belief.
No, but I think that that's biblically rooted, though.
Yeah.
Being able to see how the Lord is revealing his understanding in this message to you, right?
Yeah.
And then you being able to then, or having the responsibility then to apply it, right? Because some people will hear it and not apply it.
Yeah.
And then that goes into the parable of the sower that went to go sow seeds, right? Some stony ground, some shallow, some on good ground, and then there's some that fall among thorns, right? It's good ground, but once the fruit springs up or the flower springs up, the environment chokes, stifles, and perverts the word from being fruitful, right? So everything we saying that, you know, we rocking with each other. Just so you understand, man, our position is that the people that the Messiah came and told us that we should love and to emphasize that love is the so-called Black, Hispanic, Native Indians, right? That these are the Israelites you read about that were brought out of Egypt, led through the wilderness for 40 years, entered into the land, given commandment to take the Canaanites down and to not mingle with them, right? To not be perverted by them. That then failed that mission and was sent into multiple captivities, right? The Assyrian captivity, the Persian captivity, the Babylonian captivity, the Greek captivity, the Roman captivity. And then after the Roman captivity, as history would tell us, and as the Messiah prophesied, that we will be expelled out of the land, right? And pushed into the four corners of the earth. Upon which his message and the duty that we now have when we receive this message is to spread this gospel, the good news, as to where his people have been scattered, to bring them back and return them unto God. And that the nuance of where it differs from your mainstream religious sects of Christianity, Catholicism, and even Islam is that it's not this universal thing. Eventually there will be a universal benefit, but not until the children of God get back to their rightful position and fulfill their rightful job and duty to God, which is to rule and serve him in righteousness, which will then, that oil will trickle down to the rest of the world. Until then, the world will be in turmoil. The world will be in shambles, right? If I could share a couple scriptures, would you give me Proverbs 29:2? And then give me Deuteronomy 4. Start at 5. Matter of fact, give me Deuteronomy 4 first, and then we'll get Proverbs 29. Go ahead.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 1.
No, start at 5.
5. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgment,
Go ahead.
even as the Lord my God commanded me.
This is Moses when he received the word from the Lord on the mount, bringing it back to the children of Israel, right? I have taught you statutes and commandments as God has taught Moses. He's given this to the Israelites, read.
That ye should do so in the land whether ye go to possess it.
That was that land of Canaan. That was that promised land, promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? From the Nile to the Euphrates. In this land, go and perform these things that I've commanded you, read.
Keep, therefore, and do them.
Keep them and do them, read.
For this is your wisdom.
This is your wisdom. So when we go out in the world now and we seeking wisdom, a lot of times we're seeking it in a secular sense, all the ways outside of the Lord, right? And we're eating from trees that is good to eat from, right? Because you go back into the garden, it says you can eat from these trees, but there's a specific tree you're not supposed to eat from. So a lot of the wisdom that we gather, it's not as though that it's a forbidden tree. We can eat from them, but is that, if that becomes a source upon which we feel like that wisdom comes from, is where it then starts to be perverted. The source of our wisdom is the law, statutes, and commandments, righteousness, and faith in the Most High God. Right? Go ahead.
For this is your wisdom.
Read.
And understanding in the sight of the nations.
Because although we can eat from those trees, in reality those trees, which is those people, should really be eating from us. It's no problem with us, you know, again, exchanging words of wisdom and perspective and example, but they really should be eating from us. We should be the point of influence. Keep reading.
Which shall hear all these statutes.
Because in the sight of the nations, they should hear our wisdom, which is our statutes. Go ahead.
And say, surely this nation is a wise and understanding people.
That should be the reputation that we have amongst all the other nations. Wise and understanding.
So that's the corporate attempt to minimize that and hide that, in a sense to where as a people, the conspiracy is to never allow you guys to come forth and share this understanding.
Absolutely. What you got? Psalms 83. Listen, all praises. The Bible speaks about this, right? The corporate attempt to suppress what wisdom we had to share, right? Go ahead. Start from the top.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 1.
No.
Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace.
Why? Because
and be not still.
So this is a prayer that's being a prayer that to God to not keep silence, right? Because that's our source of wisdom, right? And when we go into these captivities, when we get into these arrogant and carnal mindsets, we tend to push the wisdom and the words of God aside. And then he says what? Instead of me facing you and letting my light and my countenance shine upon you, I'll give you my back, right? And then I'll remove my words of wisdom from you. So we pray to the Lord, please don't remove that from us, because that's where we get our wisdom and our respect from. But like we're addressing the corporate attempt to suppress that, right? Go ahead.
O God, for lo, thy enemies.
Thy what?
Thy enemies.
Thy enemies, go ahead.
Make a tumult.
Make a tumult. They're in this, they got an issue for some reason. Really don't even know why. We really haven't even gotten an exact answer as to why. We can speculate. We can call it envy, jealousy, arrogance, pride.
That's there.
We can call it a lot of things, but we've never really got a direct answer. But we can understand their enemies. Why? Go ahead.
And they that hate thee have lifted up the head.
Because we can see the proud spirit that they have, and they try to superimpose over us. Keep reading.
They have taken a crafty counsel against thy people.
They deal crafty with us. That's that corporate attempt. Crafty. Why? We're going to beat your language out of you and then say you can't learn how to read. For so long. And then by the time we allow you to read, you've been so detached from your culture, your heritage, your God, your name, everything, your total identity. And then they just throw a whole library at us of books and say, figure it out. And then, go ahead.
What do you think is happening with the youngsters these days?
The youngsters,
The black youngsters.
the black youngsters these days have been separated from an actual goal, right? They don't have a vision. Or, excuse me, the vision that they have is one that only is within the boundaries of captivity, right? Because the scriptures say what? Without a vision, the people perish. So our vision for our youngsters is to make some money by any means necessary. And it really doesn't go past that. So for us, this is why we try to come out and we try to instill into them that we got to think bigger. The issue with our youngsters is our plateau is to be equal when God created us to be better. Right? So once we get them to understand that not only has God created you to be better, that's not just a flex for you to just say, oh, I'm better. No, because with better comes more responsibility and it comes more power. Or with that power comes that responsibility. So if we know or seek to be better, or understand that we can be better, then we'll seek to be better by way of the responsibility that God gave us. Once we live up to that, it then helps the entire world. Right? Let me finish reading. Go ahead. Keep reading. No. Keep reading that, and then we'll get your precept after. Because I want to get to these points. He made a good point about the corporate attempt to suppress this knowledge and wisdom that we have. Go ahead. Use that like verse 3. They have taken crafty counsel.
They have taken crafty counsel against thy people. And consulted against thy hidden ones.
Now in the Hebrew, when you go into that word hidden ones, it says the people that we're supposed to protect. Right? When we talk about the crafty counsel and them consulted against the people that we should protect, as men, we protect our women and our children. That's where they're influencing a lot of us. Taking the man out, putting the woman up as the complete influence, and she's raising the kids to be degenerates. And that's not me attacking them. This is me speaking retroactively. This is me speaking after seeing the results over the course of decades, right? Go ahead.
They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation.
These corporations, and their attempt and their main focus is to cut us off from being a nation. That's why they emphasize that we're Americans versus being black, African American, Negro, whatever. They had to put that aside after they started to see how when we come together as a separate in a segregated society, they say, nah, we got to wash that up and blend everything together. That's why after integration, their businesses thrive. I just heard a story. I don't know how accurate it is, but they said black people during the time of the Great Depression saved Cadillac.
Yeah.
You heard that before?
Yeah.
They saved Cadillac.
Yeah.
And that black people weren't even affected by the Great Depression because they wouldn't allow us to put our money in our banks.
They didn't lose a thing.
Didn't lose anything. So with that, now they create the mystique. They create this, you know, elevated sense of appeal and a sense of status where we didn't allow you to buy Cadillac, but now you can achieve this level of luxury. Now that becomes our point and our pinnacle.
Yeah.
When in reality, the Lord got spaceships for us, man. You know what I'm saying? We don't need no Cadillac, right? They used to allow us to buy Pontiacs. They say, what's the difference between a Pontiac and a Cadillac? They said, they said something like, what does Pontiac stand for? They say, poor old nigga think it's a Cadillac. Right?
Yeah, it was a cheaper version.
It was a cheaper version, right? Go ahead.
Verse 5.
But they want to cut us off from being a nation. This is how, again, our identity was taken away from us. This is how our self-esteem was taken away from us. And then the crafty way that they replace it is, well, you guys can be equal to us now.
Inward.
Inward. And that's really an idea because we still see, after 150 years over that of being let off of these plantations, they still not even giving us that equality that they say we can achieve.
I just left Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I went to Greenwood.
Massacre.
And I was talking with the people down there. I didn't realize that they had over 100 blocks.
Yeah. Yep.
100.
Yep. Shalom. Shalom. Listen, 100 blocks. They had over 200 buses. I mean, we had everything. It just gave me chills even saying that. It was crazy. Like, we had it all. I always talk about the Reconstruction era. I went to DC to go see the African American Museum, and I love the way that they take you through point for point, era for era, right? It's 3 levels. You start at the bottom, right? And the bottom level looks like the bottom of a slave, or a bottom of a ship, right? There's no such thing as a slave ship, but the bottom of a ship. And it literally tells you all the people that was involved, all the influence that made our own and even those that look like us over in the land, how they turned on themselves and turned on us, right? It then tell you all the other players that was involved, all the European players, how the entire world got rich off our enslavement. Then it moves through the decades all the way up to like 2010. And the point I'm bringing out is during the Reconstruction era, when we was let off of the plantation, that was our time to get out. That was our time to skedaddle. But what ended up happening was the North was creating this illusion that they wanted our liberation and freedom and equality, but then the South had other plans.
Right.
So now the North, who was kidnapping people and sending them back south, right, looked like the good guys. And then the South part, where they say, we don't stand for this equality, you guys really deserve to be our slaves. Now we're going to persecute you. So now we're running to the North saying, hey, can we get equal protection under the law? Can we get that? And the North is saying, well, you know, okay, cool. We're going to elect a few of you blacks, a few of you N-words, right, to be mayors, aldermen, even governors at the time, right? Now we're getting involved into this political mess. That totally changed our mind, because now our blacks that are getting elected, bumping and rubbing elbows with these northern whites, is now coming back to our people saying, look, we can get this done, we can get that done, all you gotta do is vote, all you gotta do is this, all you gotta do is that. Now our mindset changes. We're now only looking to be equal, and now we're also trying to incorporate ourselves into a system that was just enslaving us weeks ago, months ago, right? Literally. So then now we get caught in between the illusion of the good guys of the North and the bad guys of the South, when all actuality they're pushing for the same thing, right? Go ahead.
Verse 5, or middle of 4. That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
It says that they have, their idea was to cut us off from being a nation so that the name of Israel was no more in our remembrance. That's why most of our people have no idea that being a patrilineal descendant of Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian makes you an Israelite according to the Bible. We don't have no idea that. They literally took that from us. Funny thing, I went back maybe a few months ago, and I watched the reboot or the remake of Roots. Now, I've been hearing about Roots my whole life, but Roots was created in the 70s, man. I wasn't alive around then, but I grew up around some.
We used to watch it in school.
So they had y'all watch it in school. So with my parents being some pro-Black people, I heard it a lot of my whole life. And even culturally you hear about it. But I watched the reboot. I had no idea that Chicken George was Kunta Kinte's grandson. I'm thinking he was way down the line. We're talking about one generation separation between Kunta Kinte in Africa and Chicken George not giving a damn about his granddaddy. At least Kizzy held on to a little bit from her father and tried to pass it down to her son, but he didn't care. Why? Because he got next to Massa, right? So their idea is to cut us off from being a nation, and they've accomplished it. This is why the message now with that gospel is to go out and rebuild these people and bring them back into the word of God, into their true heritage and identity. Go ahead.
Verse
Hold
5.
that.
For they have consulted together with one consent.
They came together with one consent, read.
That are confederate against thee.
They are confederate against us, go ahead.
The tabernacles of Edom.
And then it starts to list these nations, right? Our understanding, according to history and the biblical prophecies, that the children of Edom would be your modern day Caucasians. So that corporate interest and that corporate push to suppress us is right here in the Bible. Our enemies, the people that hate us, they want to consult against our hidden ones. They want to take us away from being a nation, right? And it starts to list a lot of these nations that are in relation with each other today. All of the nations are part of the EU, all of the nations are part of NATO is listed here. Now, one more, get that in Proverbs 29. When we get that back, right? Go ahead.
It's the book of Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 2. It says, when the righteous are in authority.
So when we get our identity back, when we reverse the curse, and we take the authority, when the righteous are in authority, go ahead.
It says, the people rejoice.
People rejoice. Go ahead.
But when the wicked beareth rule.
But when wicked people are in rulership, go ahead.
The people mourn.
So you see how when we take back our rightful position as not only being God's chosen people, but holding that height of the hill, ruling in righteousness, there's going to be a rejoicing that we're going to see in the world versus the perpetual mourning that we see from the rulers that are in the world today, right? Bring both of y'all precepts. You bring yours and then you get yours.
He just read mine.
Oh, he read that? So yeah, we was already on the same page. What was your precept?
This book of Psalms chapter 55, starting verse 20.
That's good.
It says, he hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him.
So it's talking about our enemies. He put forth his hand against those that were at peace. We tried to be at peace with these people so many different times through so much treachery and oppression. But he still puts his hand against us. Go ahead.
It says he hath broken his covenant.
And then we make agreements. We say, okay, this is, if we're going to be able to move forward amicably and peacefully, then these are the terms. And we sit down, we talk about it, we agree to it, and say, okay, cool. And then they turn around and they break that covenant. Did the same thing with the natives, did the same thing with the so-called Hispanic Indians, read.
Says the words of his mouth were smoother than butter.
The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, go ahead.
But war was in his heart.
He speaks great swelling, smooth, nice words, but war was in his heart. We understand the corporate interest, the corporate attack behind the scenes. Finish it out.
It says his words were softer than oil.
Softer than oil, go ahead.
Yet were they drawn swords.
Yet were they drawn swords, right? They're going to talk about the war on drugs to clean up our community, yet they're the ones funneling the drugs into the community.
I grew up in that time.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, you know, I felt like I didn't grow up in that time. I mean, I was born kind of like in the middle of it, right? I'm a 91 baby. But I was definitely affected by the inception of it because my father got caught up into,
Not many of us.
into the treachery of it.
A lot of us did.
A lot of us did. So when we recognize our history and when we then correlate it with what the Bible is saying is going to happen to the Israelites and how they're then going to come out of it. Because when we start looking at the commandments that the Israelites broke, these are the same things that affect us in our communities today, right? Give me Leviticus 19. Start at 15.
Did you ever, I don't know if this is real, but Russia has some pictures.
Yeah. Putin put.
They were all black.
Yeah, Putin put them out. Putin put them out. And people were not only amazed, but a lot of people were upset. Because now you're revealing things that we've been trying to suppress for centuries.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you put them out, but we've already known that. When I first started learning about this was in 2010. It's a book called The Russian Icon Book. Around that time, the book was maybe about $250. Within maybe 3 or 4 years, that book went from $250 to $10,000. And to be honest, you can't even find it on the internet to buy it now. Even if I had the $10,000 that I wanted to spend on it, that I would have to spend on it, I can't even find the book. But a lot of people have it in like PDF form, where you can kind of get it for free. But you know, some people might be inclined to say, "Oh, that's fabricated." But then Putin goes into the basements of these Russian cathedrals, and he pulls the records himself and brings it out. You feel me? So it just is consistent with things that we've been talking about for decades, right? What you got? Leviticus 19.
This book of Leviticus chapter 19 verse 15 says, "Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment."
Read it again.
It says, "Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment."
No unrighteousness in judgment, right? You talked and mentioned the young black kids. All of their judgment is unrighteous. Because see, we'll create a street code, right? Okay, this is how things are supposed to go. You're not supposed to turn on your homie. You're not supposed to mess with this girl. You're not supposed to snitch, right? Loyalty is serious. It's a very, very serious, very strict thing. We don't do any of it. Let you go get locked up. Your homie is on your girl probably the next day. He was probably on your girl before you got locked up. Let y'all get locked up together. The first thing you're gonna do is snitch to get yourself off in order to, you know, put the time on him, right? Or we'll do some dishonorable stuff. We'll try to pin the issue that we have and the dirt we've been doing in our community on our woman. Yeah. But remember, our woman was the hidden ones that we were supposed to be protecting. Yeah. Read that again.
It says, "Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment."
No unrighteousness in judgment. Then it's, well, if I could fight, I could snitch, get out, and come back to the hood. I can go pimp on a woman. I can go beat on a woman. But y'all better not do it to my little sister. You better not do it to my cousin. Right? I can go and sell dope in the hood. But you better not sell it to my mom. That's unrighteousness and judgment. That is having a respecter of persons. Go ahead.
It says, "Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor."
Of the poor, go ahead.
"Nor honor the person of the mighty."
We should call it even across the board. I can't feel sorry for somebody because they're poor and let them get away with it, nor can I reverence and then hold somebody to a high esteem because they are of rich status and give them a pass. We got to call it the evenly across the board. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That ain't happening.
Oh, it's definitely not happening, right? But these are the things that are plaguing us. Imagine if we had a code amongst ourselves where we did operate justly across the board. Balance. Read.
It says, "But in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor." It says, "Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer."
Do not go up and down as a talebearer. Gossiping. Man, that's throughout all of our communities. You know one person you can call right now that got the drop and the inside scoop on everything that's going on in the hood. They got the inside scoop on everything going outside the hood. You'll call getting the inside scoop on what's going on in the hood, and they mess around and start telling you what's going on with them at work. It's the same thing going on with my boss. Man, he over here cheating on his wife and she done pulled up to the job. You know, I don't even know these people. But I'm all in their business now. Not to mention the internet. Not to mention the internet. So we go up and down talebearing. We'll take a little piece of a story, we'll embellish it, what they say, put 20s on it, put dubs on it, and then switch the whole story. Hold that, go ahead.
It says, "Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. Neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor."
Neither shall you stand against the blood of thy neighbor. Get that for me in the in like the NIV or the NLT, right? Because standing against the blood of your neighbor, that's the old English way of saying it. We got to hear how it says it in a more modern sense because it's mind-blowing, right? What precept you have?
No understanding, foolish.
Oh, okay, hold that. Hold that.
NIV.
Yeah, get it in NIV. That's fine.
So you guys work both Old and New Testament?
Oh, yeah.
Old Covenant, New Covenant?
So what's so funny is that we still take the position that we're under the Old Covenant.
Okay.
Right? The New Covenant has been stated, it has been promised, but we are not yet in it because we're still suffering consequences of the Old Covenant. Right? Remember, the Old Covenant, we were punished for our wickedness and disobedience to the Lord, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. Under the New Covenant, we will be brought back, and we haven't been brought back yet. Right? So we're still literally in captivity, still suffering the consequences, because remember, the gospel was, I come to preach deliverance to the captives. Through Christianity, they say, oh, well, see, no, because we're captive to sin. Yeah, we have been captive to sin, and our subjection to the sinful nature has kept us in this literal captivity, but it doesn't take away from the fact that God promised to deliver us out of the places that he scattered us. That was what we was reading in Deuteronomy 30 when you had first walked up. We can revisit it too, though. But the Israelites, God's chosen people, are still in the places that they were scattered for wickedness and disobedience, a punishment under the Old Covenant. So when we get into the New Covenant is when the God is going to bring us back, give us that land where he says, well, we won't sin anymore. The northern and the southern kingdom will be brought back together. All the 12 tribes will be together. And even under the Old Covenant, or excuse me, the New Covenant, it was promised that the northern and southern kingdom will walk out of captivity together. In Jeremiah the 3rd chapter. You got that? Go ahead.
This book of Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 16 in the NIV. It says, do not go about spreading slander.
Do not go about slandering your people, right? That's just all the various ways of gossip. Go ahead.
Among your people.
Read.
Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life.
Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. Go ahead.
I am the Lord.
Read it. What's that, NIV?
Done.
Read it in NOT. Because it goes into it, don't do anything to endanger his life. But when you read it in a certain translation, it says, don't stand by when your neighbor's life is in danger. Right? Standing by idly against the blood of your neighbor. There's so many different times where we should have stepped up as individuals and as a total community when either our neighbor's life was in danger, whether we're wrongfully accused, wrongfully convicted, right? Or whether something bad is happening. We always bring up the George Floyd situation. All of our people stood around George Floyd and didn't do nothing and just sat there and was more ready to pull their phones out than to put their life on the line to save their brother's life. Both of y'all might have been in jail, but it wasn't going to be for the rest of your life, and that brother would have still had his life. According to our laws, we can't gossip. We have to judge honestly across the board, and we cannot stand by when our people's lives are in danger, nor can we do anything to endanger it. So that eliminates gangbanging, that eliminates drug dealing, that eliminates pimping. Our community would be cleaned up if we just followed the laws of God. But guess what? I got something for you. Get that in Deuteronomy 28. Hold that. Give me Deuteronomy 28. Finish it.
Leviticus 19 and 16 in the NLT. It says, do not spread slanderous gossip among your people. Do not stand idly by when your neighbor's life is threatened. When your neighbor's life is threatened.
Greater love have no man than to lay his life down for his friend. This is from the words of our Messiah, from the words of Christ. Because he came and did that and set the example. Because the law had already told us to do that. Christ understood, the Most High already understood and recognized, our people, my people are going to perish if I don't do something about it. So he sends his son, and his son gets down here, sees all of the wickedness and treachery that we involved in, and said, man, I got to die for these people. Whatever, so be it. The work and the will of the Lord has to be done because it was necessary. So we take these examples and we say, you know what, I can incorporate and utilize them to clean up the community that we are part of, because it would be easy for me to try to come up with some sort of excuse to not do it for selfish and self-preserving reasons. Nah, we are a body, right? We are a body and we have to operate as such. Go ahead. That was it. Go back to that in Leviticus 19. No slander. Nothing that's going to endanger your brother. Just judgments. Go ahead.
Leviticus 19 and 17, it says, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart.
Now we have to eliminate this hatred that we choose to hold on to with our people. Being unrelenting, being unmerciful, being incompassionate. Go ahead.
It says, thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor.
How many times do we give our people a pass and we hold our breath when we see our people doing wrong and we choose not to say nothing? If we don't say nothing, the Bible is saying that's hate. Don't hate your brother in your heart. Rebuke him. Correct him. Don't go behind his back and start making up slander and tall tales about him. Go to that man, go to that woman in their face and say, brother, sister, what you doing is wrong. Stop what you doing. Turn away from that. Look what it's doing. You're putting your neighbor's life in danger. Hold that. Go ahead.
It says, and not suffer sin upon him.
And don't allow him to continue to sin. Read.
It says, thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people.
That's one of the biggest things that we're dealing with, a grudge. We hold so many grudges, and then we want to avenge ourselves based off of that grudge, when we really should have let it go a long time ago. In today's times, especially through the message of Christ, we have to overemphasize that love and leniency. So sometimes you might say, nah, man, this has happened too many times, or nah, that's just too big of an issue. That's just too big of a treacherous, backdooring deal that he did. I can't have that. No, nope. You gotta let it go. You gotta let it go, because we have too much of a deficit now to make that a problem, because that's gonna disrupt us from our journey and our mission to get back to the top and to be above.
Preach.
You right, it was wrong. You right, he shouldn't have did it. You right, under any other circumstances, it's unacceptable. But in the time we're living in now, I gotta let it go, because I can't make my issue with that brother or that sister bigger than the program and the mission that we on. So I gotta let it go. That's why Christ said what? If your brother trespasses against you 7 times in a day and comes to you 7 times repenting, you forgive him. Simple, right? Go ahead.
It says, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
You love your neighbor as yourself, because we all know that we found ourselves in situations when we've done things that was unpleasant, unbecoming, and dishonorable. And we got to be able to extend that level of love, mercy, and forgiveness to our brothers as we want to receive that from the Father and His Son, right? These are the things that's necessary that literally drastically change our entire nation. One more. What was that? You on 18 right now?
Yeah, and 18, yeah.
Okay, finish it. Keep reading.
It says, I am the Lord. It says, ye shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle.
Okay, that's it on that. Leviticus 19, Exodus, Deuteronomy. I'm talking about we got many laws. I just read 4 verses that could drastically change our entire community. Imagine if we implemented and incorporated and started to follow all of the different things that God had commanded us, right? What precepts you have?
Just lost it. I'm ready for Deuteronomy.
Get that, Deuteronomy 28.
I have Proverbs and I have
Get Deuteronomy 28, read verse 44, right? Because when I mention all of the different things that we go through and deal with within our community, it's not as though we're the only people that's happening to. It's treachery in the white community, treachery in the Asian community, treachery in the Arab community. But who does it affect more? It affects us. The Arabs still come over here, capitalize off of us. Asians come over here, capitalize off. We know whites capitalizing. Why does it affect us more than anybody else? Even though it's happening to everybody, right? Go ahead.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 40.
44.
44.
Uh-huh.
He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him.
That's the economic status. We don't have the position of power or the economic status and power to lend to people, right? Even with black-owned banks, it's still backed by white insurance companies, right? So, and without that, you can't even operate as a bank. We are the borrowers and not the lenders, right? Go ahead. These are all the curses that was going to happen to the Israelites. Read.
He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail.
Social status. Go ahead.
Moreover, all these curses.
My bad. I did touch you like I told you to stop. Keep reading.
Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee.
Jump up to verse 15. Let's get some context. Or jump up to 1, then we're going to go to 15 so the brother understands. My name is Taz, bro. What's your name? Ephraim? Oh, powerful, right? Yeah, it's so funny, man. We be talking to people and then they have these like real niche biblical names, right? You don't see too many Ephraims. I've met an Ephraim before here and there, but you don't see too many of them. Go ahead.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
If you shall do it, go ahead.
To observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day.
Read.
That the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth.
If we obey, he's going to set us on high above all nations. So from 1 to 14, it's all of the different blessings that God would give to the Israelites if they adhered and followed his commandments. Jump to verse 15.
15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day.
So if we don't adhere and hearken, read.
That all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
So from 15 all the way down to 68 is all of the curses that will happen to the Israelites. Now jump back to verse 45. Go ahead.
45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee.
The curses are going to come upon us and are going to pursue us. Meaning, even if we leave the land, no matter where we go, the curses are going to be upon us. Go ahead.
And overtake thee.
And they're going to actually catch up to us and overtake us. Go ahead.
Till thou be destroyed.
Until we're destroyed. Again, this is as a result of us not hearkening to the commandments of God. Read.
Because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
Read.
To keep his commandments. And his statutes which he commands thee.
Read.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder.
That word sign in the Hebrew, in the original language, it means a distinguishable mark. So when I go into and I say, well, it happens to other communities, how is it such a distinguishable mark upon us? Because when you look at the issues and the problems that we have, it's a direct result of what we're not following in the Bible, of not following the commandments. So when we have issues within our community where we're perverting judgment, we're gossiping, we're slandering, we're standing by idly and putting our neighbor's life in danger, it affects us way differently than it affects anybody else. Keep reading. It says it's going to be upon us to pursue us, overtake us as a sign and a wonder. Meaning it's going to be something that you're going to be able to understand and recognize on us versus anyone else. Go ahead.
And upon thy seed forever.
And it's not just the people that it's being delivered to here. It's going to be a generational thing. And then we know, especially now when we talk about economics and status, we talk about breaking generational curses, right? Keep reading.
Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness.
Because we did not serve God, read.
And gladness of heart. For the abundance of all things.
Jump to verse 54.
54.
Go ahead.
So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate.
Hold on. The Bible said that the man among us was supposed to be tender and delicate. Do we treat our men tenderly and delicately? Absolutely. We treat them hard, rough, and rugged. Right? Go ahead.
His eye shall be evil towards his brother.
His eye was going to be evil towards our brother. This is what you call black on black crime. Now, again, is there white on white crime? Yeah. There's more white on white crime than there's white on any other crime. There's more Asian on Asian crime than there is on any other crime. There's more Arab on Arab crime than there's on any other crime. But it don't affect them like it affects black people with black on black crime. Right? Go ahead.
And towards the wife of his bosom.
Not only was his eye going to be evil towards his brother, but his eye was going to be evil towards the wife of his bosom. Whom what? The wife of his bosom. Go ahead.
And toward the remnant of his children.
And his children. Go ahead.
Which he shall leave.
Which he shall leave. Do black people, Hispanic people, Native Indian people have an issue with fatherless homes? Watch this. Do white people leave their kids? Yes. Do Asian people leave their kids? Yes. Do Arab people leave their kids? Definitely. Do the East Africans or the West Africans leave their kids? Yeah. But it just don't affect them like they affect us. Because it's a distinguishable mark. It's a sign and a wonder upon us.
That's right.
Go ahead. Keep reading. Use that 55 now.
All right. So that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children, whom he shall eat, because he hath nothing left him in the seed.
Because he have nothing left him in the seeds, he's not going to leave them anything. That generational wealth thing again, right? Or the generational curses, which is going into generational wealth. We want to, as black people, we want to now finally get to the position mentally where we want to build ourselves up financially so we can leave our kids something. But really, it's just 401k, life insurance policy, maybe a couple properties. But when are we going to own the land? When are we going to actually own the land? Not borrow it, not lease it, but actually own it to be able to pass it down where somebody can't take it from you, right?
You mean owning and keeping?
Owning it and keeping it. But I'm talking about owning it to the point where somebody doesn't have the ability to come take it from you, right? And that's going to come with, again, us being the head and not the tail, right? Keep reading. Dealing with the woman.
And in the straightness, wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in all thy gates.
We've been distressed to the point where we have nothing to give our children. Keep reading.
The tender and delicate woman among you.
Now we talking about the tender, delicate woman, because we definitely don't treat her tenderly and delicately, right? Go ahead.
Which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness.
Listen, we had such a tender and delicate disposition towards our women, we wouldn't even allow this sister to be out here barefoot on the ground. Like, what? The sole of her foot wouldn't even allow her to touch the ground. That's how we looked at and valued our women. And again, another thing that if we just incorporated into our community, it would drastically change it for the better. Read.
And tenderness.
Uh-huh.
Her eyes shall be evil toward her husband of her bosom.
Now we got issues not only with what we push to them, but we also got issues coming from them as well, right? Feeling like they don't need us, feeling like they equal to us, right? Which throws off the balance and the feng shui and function of the household. Even sometimes feeling like they're above, feeling like they're less than, not even actually appreciating the things that their man should be there for. Go ahead.
And toward her son.
And her eye is not going to just be evil to her husband, but it's now evil towards the son. Why? Because she's probably not with the father, and the son probably reminds her of the father, right? Again, funny thing is, I was just watching Boys in the Hood the other day, right? When the last time you watched Boys in the Hood, brother?
Last year.
Last year? Watch it again for 2025. Because you know, it's just something new every time we get that. But you remember Doughboy's mom sitting there like, you ain't nothing, you ain't gonna be nothing, you're just like your daddy. Her eye was gonna be evil towards her children. Go ahead.
And towards her daughter.
And towards the daughter, right? Because what happens is, especially in this vain, superficial society we live in, a woman and her appearance and her beauty is everything. It's everything to them. I'm talking about they are literally risking their lives. What's the brother, DC Young Fly, right? A new young up-and-coming comedian out of Atlanta who knows he's an Israelite too. He got 3 kids with a woman, and she goes under the knife to try to make herself look better in her appearance, and she ends up losing her life to leave 3 kids to this brother. When she should have just appreciated what she looked like.
Right.
She should have just appreciated that. But what happens is, our women are not even appreciating the maturation process of life. Oh, my boobs is sagging, my butt is sagging, I got stretch marks, I got a little pudge in the front. Not knowing that when you're dealing with a real mature man, we like that type of stuff.
Right.
Our preference and our desires grow with our women growing, and they evolve with how our women evolve. Especially if you're dealing with the man. Listen, I have so much respect for my son's mother. When she had him, I'm talking about we was going through issues. And she had him natural. We went to a birthing center. And when I just sat and watched her just go through that man and push my son, I just say, hey man, baby, you did your thing, okay? And God, I'm talking about I had hard eyes and little birds chirping around. I was like, man. Because I can appreciate that, especially when I'm dealing with this. I can see what you're going through and we going through it together. But when her eye is evil towards her daughter, she looking away as a result of all of the childbirths that she done went through. Maybe life has got involved. She ain't able to eat the way she want, work out the way she want, keep herself together. And she see her daughter growing up and achieving and blossoming into the body that she once had. Now that clash happens, right? She's getting certain attention. And then guess what? When the mom is single at 50, and now the daughter is single at 25, y'all enter into the same competition pool.
Man.
She can't even really bring no foreign man home because now he possibly looking or the woman is psychologically psyching herself out thinking that he's looking and entertaining the daughter. When in all actuality, that man that she's supposed to be was supposed to be her father, which you would never question, or at least we shouldn't because we know how weird stuff get in this day. But you shouldn't even question that he's looking at your daughter. These are how things are supposed to go. But an eye is going to be evil towards it, and this causing a dysfunction within the household, which we know drastically is probably the predominant issue that's causing the problems in our community. This is right here in the Bible that was going to happen to the Israelites. When these things are turned off, who could stop us? I made this point the other day, last Saturday. When we talk about black people, all right, let's separate that from saying that the Israelites for just a moment. When we talk about everything that's affecting black people, if we corrected those things, who could really be better than us? I mean, there is nobody. There is no one.
I mean, the culture is the influence.
The culture is the influence. So then when we realize that God said that the same thing was going to happen to the Israelites, if we have faith in this Bible, then that means either we are the Israelites, or we got to watch out and see who these Israelites are, because they're going to be the only ones that could stop us.
Right.
But in all actuality, everything that was suppressing the Israelites is everything that's suppressing the black, Hispanic, and Native Indians. Everything that was prophesied to happen to the Israelites is everything that's happened to the black, Hispanic, Native Indians. All of the different ways that the Israelites had to get back to their level of prominence and superiority is everything that the so-called black, Hispanic, Native Indians got to do. Either with these people, or we got to watch out for them. Right? Go ahead.
57. And toward her young one that cometh out from between her feet.
And her eye was going to be evil towards the young one that come out from between her feet. Finish it out.
And toward her children which she shall bear.
And the children which she shall bear. How is the so-called black, Hispanic, and Native Indian woman eye evil towards the children that come from between her feet and the ones that she should bear? Because she's killing them before they even get into the world. We are killing millions of our babies annually. This is in the Bible. Not only would our numbers be better, not only would our morale will be better, then our social, economic, and political status will be better. And the Bible literally tells us that when we adhere to these laws, statutes, and commandments, that's when we will find success. That's when we'll find prosperity. Get that in Joshua 1.
Right.
And then we'll see if the brother or the sister got some questions. What was up? They had to go? I was on the road. They got a flyer? This will be up.
The man is good.
We good on the levels? Okay. Joshua 1, we're going to read 6 to 8. Quick, man, quick. Brother, come on, brother, you even got time. We ain't got time.
This is the book of Joshua.
6 to 8.
Chapter 1, verse 6.
Uh-huh.
Be strong and of good courage.
Be strong and of good courage, because it takes that level of strength to be able to persevere as the light of the world through this world of darkness. Go ahead.
For unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land.
We were supposed to get that land, which again is still promising to us. That's the journey and the fight to get back. Read.
Which I swear unto their fathers to give to them. Only be thou strong and very courageous.
Only be strong and be very courageous, because again, you're going to be persecuted for these things. You're going to be ridiculed for these things. You're going to be criticized. People are going to make you feel very insecure for standing on the word of God, especially in a world where most people either don't believe or they got a whole bunch of reasons and excuses to try to discredit our points coming out of the book. Go ahead.
That thou may observe to do according to all the law.
That we may observe that law. Read.
Which Moses my servant commanded thee.
The law that Moses gave us. Go ahead.
Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left.
If we're going to walk the straight and narrow path, we can't veer off to the right. We can't veer off to the left. We got to stay on a straight and narrow. Read.
And that thou mayest prosper with ever so thou goest.
Read again, brother. Go ahead. That thou mayest what?
That thou mayest prosper.
That thou may prosper. Go ahead.
Whithersoever.
Go ahead.
Thou goest.
Wherever we go, if we walk that straight and narrow path, that's where our prosperity is going to come from. Keep reading.
The book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth.
It shall not depart out of your mouth. We should constantly be in conversation and in discussion of the righteousness and how we're supposed to adhere to the word of God. Go ahead.
But thou shalt meditate therein day and night.
We got to meditate day and night. Go ahead.
That thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein.
That we may do everything that's written according to this law. Go ahead.
For then thou shalt make thy ways prosperous.
Then our ways are going to be prosperous. Read.
And then thou shalt have good success.
And then we shall have good success. That was 8. These are the things that's important for us, and this is the message that we're coming out speaking unto the so-called blacks, Hispanic, and Native Indians. We are God's chosen people. We are the people that you read about in this book. We are those that are suffering from the consequences as a result of not adhering to the law, statutes, and commandments. When we get into this New Testament, when we start talking about Christ, he says, I come to preach deliverance to the captives, to give sight to the blind, right? to then heal those that are bruised, right? And all of the total restoration of things that come with being in Christ that was taken away from you from being absent from the Most High God, right? We mentioned something about the distinguishable mark and that sign and that wonder in Deuteronomy the 30th chapter, what we read when you walked up. Let me get that real quick before I come to a conclusion, right? Deuteronomy 30 from the top, because it says that mark and that sign and that wonder is going to serve as an indicator for us to remember who we are in this time, right? In the Bible. Get that in Baruch 2. Go ahead. You already had it?
Book of Deuteronomy,
That boy
chapter
on fire.
30, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, when all these things have come upon thee, the blessings and the curse.
The blessing and the curse. When the signs and the wonder has come upon you, go ahead.
Which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call to mind among all the nations, whether the Lord thy God hath driven thee.
The sign and the wonder, you were going to recognize it and you were going to call them to mind wherever the Lord hath scattered you. Go ahead.
And shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice.
And when we recognize these signs, then we're going to return unto him and do what? And obey his voice. Now, I was mentioning this when you walked up, that at the time when this was written, they hadn't been scattered. There hadn't been a falling away. These are all contingency prophecies upon which we would disobey the words of God. So when the curses came upon us, they were going to serve as indicators for us to recognize who we are, because we read earlier, later in Psalms 83, that our identity will be taken away from us. That's it on that. Give me Baruch 2.
It's the book of Baruch, chapter 2 and verse 30. It says, for I knew that they would not hear me.
So that's why the contingency prophecy was given, because the Lord says he knew that they wouldn't hear. Go ahead.
It says, because it is a stiff-necked people.
Because we're a stiff-necked people. Go ahead.
But in the land of their captivity.
But in the land where we're in captivity, what's going to happen?
They shall remember themselves.
We're going to remember who we are, man. They tried to take it away from us. They tried to hide it from us. They tried to scramble our brains. But through the Spirit and power of the Most High God, in the name of his only begotten Son, we had these records inspired and divinely given by the Most High himself through his Son, the Word of God. And they could not hide it and could not keep it from us. In the place of our captivity, we was going to remember who we are. And that's what we had to teach our people, right? Shalom, sis. How you doing? Ephraim, it's a lot, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot we got to get into, man. This is our history book. Having a conversation with a guy that just came up right before you, and he's just like, oh, well, you know, it's a fictional book. It's like, fiction? Where's the fiction in it? But of course, this is stuff that they have to tell themselves, and I'm not mad at them because they don't resonate. If I sent him, his name was Peter. If I sent Peter to go watch Boys in the Hood, he'd be confused. He said, why was Trey so angry? Why was Trey so angry? Because funny thing, that's what Trey's teacher was saying.
If he believed in the word, then that would mean everything he's doing is wrong. And that would make him inadequate. Therefore not liking himself and having self-hatred.
Exactly. And it's funny because again, when you see in the beginning when Trey gets into a fight at school, the teacher is on the phone with Trey's mom like, he's a good student, but he just has such a temper. He's so angry. Like, can I recommend therapy or a psychiatrist? Like, I don't really understand what's going on.
Is there a father in the home?
And then she said, oh, well, you're not going to see Trey anymore. He's going to live with his father. Oh, he has a father. Oh, yeah. Or did you think we made babies ourselves? He's definitely got a father. See what I'm saying? But we can also understand that anger could be as a result of that father being out of the home, which is why it was necessary for him to go live with Furious. And then when he lives with Furious, what happens? He makes a total turnaround. Now he's the influence of his friends in the hood. When the USC recruit came and sat down with Ricky, he says, listen, man, there's a good possibility you might not go to the league. What do you plan on doing? And one of the first things he said was, I just got chills again. He says, man, well, you know, me and my friend Trey, he said, maybe I'll study business. Me and my friend Trey, we already talked about going in business together. He's not trying to follow his big brother. He's trying to go and do something better for himself like his friend Trey. And that mindset came from him going and living with his dad. Man, I'm finna go home and watch it again. It's a lot there.
But I gotta run, man.
Appreciate you, man. All right, you from San Diego? Or you from Seattle? You stationed out here right now?
No, I'm not. I'm out.
Just out here visiting?
Yeah.
Well, listen, we got...
My kids live here in LA.
Okay, cool. Listen, we got a powerful brother named Officer Yatab out there in Seattle. He goes out to 4th and Pine.
I think I've seen them down there.
Probably have. So you got a flyer?
Yeah.
All right. 4th and Pine, man, every Saturday. I'm not sure what time. I think they'll be out there about 3. But yeah.
Not far from Pike Place.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right? So yeah, man, appreciate it. Have a good one, man, and be blessed, all right?
Yeah, I'll too.
Absolutely. What's going on, sis? You all right?
Yeah.
That's right, that's right. Hey, man, with that, man, I'll rest, all right? Shalom. All right.
For all his sons and his daughters won't fill the cities with faces. Iniquities of they father, bloodthirstiest of our nation. Not for living water, waiting to put that work in. Hamashiach give us that order, prepare slaughter. For all his sons and his daughters won't fill the cities with faces. Iniquities of they father, bloodthirstiest of our nation. Not for living water, waiting to put this work in. Hamashiach give us that order.